The Strait of Hormuz is one of the most important waterways on the planet. Yet most people have never seen it on a map. This narrow corridor, only a few dozen miles wide at its tightest point, connects the Persian Gulf to the open ocean. And every single day, nearly 1/5 of the world's oil supply passes through it. That means the global economy depends on a passage of water smaller than many major cities. And right now, that passage sits at the center of rising geopolitical tension. To understand why the Strait of Hormuz matters so much, we need to start with geography. The Persian Gulf is home to some of the world's largest oil producers, including Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, and Iran. For these nations, exporting energy is not optional. It is the backbone of their economies. But there is only one direct maritime exit from the Gulf into global markets: the Strait of Hormuz. At its narrowest navigational point, the shipping lanes are just a few miles wide in each direction. Massive oil tankers must pass through carefully controlled channels, making the route highly sensitive to disruption. Now consider this. Roughly 20% of global oil consumption flows through this single choke point. In addition, significant volumes of liquefied natural gas, especially from Qatar, also pass through these waters. If traffic slows down, prices move. If traffic stops, markets react immediately. Oil is not just fuel. It influences inflation, transportation, food prices, industrial production, and financial markets. And because oil markets operate on expectations as much as supply, even the threat of disruption can cause price spikes. Iran's geographic position makes the situation even more strategic. Iran controls the northern coastline of the strait. Across the water sits Oman, but Iran's proximity gives it the ability to monitor and potentially influence maritime traffic. Over the years, Iranian officials have repeatedly signaled that in times of severe pressure, the strait could be used as leverage. This does not necessarily mean a full closure. That would likely trigger an immediate international military response. But leverage can take many forms: increased naval patrols, harassment of commercial vessels, seizures of tankers, drone surveillance, missile positioning along the coast. Each action sends a signal, and markets pay attention. We have seen examples before. In past periods of heightened tension, tanker incidents and naval confrontations caused temporary spikes in oil prices. Even when supply was not fully interrupted, uncertainty alone drove volatility. Now imagine a larger escalation scenario. If confrontation between the United States and Iran intensifies, the strait becomes a pressure point. Shipping insurance costs would rise sharply. Companies might reroute vessels where possible, though alternatives are limited and far more expensive. Energy importers in Asia and Europe would feel immediate impact. Countries like China, India, Japan, and South Korea rely heavily on Gulf energy exports. Any sustained disruption could ripple outward through global supply chains. The effects would not be abstract. Higher transportation costs mean higher prices for goods. Energy-intensive industries would face pressure. Financial markets would adjust expectations rapidly. Inflation, already a concern in many economies, could accelerate, and that is precisely why the Strait of Hormuz carries such strategic weight. It is not only a regional issue, it is a global economic vulnerability. From a military perspective, the strait is equally complex. The waters are shallow in many areas, making them vulnerable to naval mines. Fast attack craft can maneuver quickly in narrow channels. Coastal missile systems can cover significant portions of the shipping lanes. However, it is also important to understand something critical. Closing the strait would not be simple. Major global powers maintain strong naval presence in the region specifically to ensure freedom of navigation. The United States Fifth Fleet operates in nearby waters. Allied naval forces patrol regularly. Any attempt to fully block maritime passage would likely provoke a rapid and forceful response. That is why most analysts believe a total shutdown is unlikely, but limited disruption, that is far more plausible and limited disruption can still cause major economic consequences, because global markets react not just to reality, but to risk. This is where strategy becomes central. Iran understands the leverage the strait provides. The United States understands the necessity of keeping it open. Energy importing nations understand their dependence. That creates a delicate balance: deterrence on one side, leverage on the other, and markets watching every development. In moments of heightened tension, even small incidents can have outsized effects. A damaged tanker, a naval warning shot, a temporary halt in traffic. Each scenario introduces uncertainty, and uncertainty drives volatility. The Strait of Hormuz is often described as the world's most important oil choke point, but it is more than that. It represents how geography shapes global power. It demonstrates how regional conflicts can carry worldwide economic implications, and it shows how interconnected modern economies truly are. When energy flows smoothly, the system remains stable. When choke points become unstable, the entire structure feels pressure. That is why analysts, investors, and governments monitor developments in this narrow stretch of water so closely. The rising tension between the United States and Iran does not automatically mean the strait will close, but it does mean that the risk premium in global markets could increase, and risk premiums translate into higher prices. Higher prices influence political decisions, and political decisions influence global stability. In geopolitics, geography is destiny, and the Strait of Hormuz is one of the clearest examples of that principle. A narrow corridor, a massive economic impact, a strategic pressure point in a fragile moment. The real question is not whether the strait matters. It always has. The real question is how leaders on all sides will manage the risk surrounding it. Because in a globalized world, even a few miles of water can influence billions of lives. In the next episode, we take a closer look at another critical question. How strong is Iran militarily? And how would that shape any potential escalation?